I'm Emily.
Hi, I'm Renee.
And we are the Glimmer Hunters. And today we have a very special guest with us, the person who coined the term Glimmers. That is Deb Dana.
Deb Dana is a clinician, consultant, and international speaker specialising in complex trauma. She is the leading translator for general readers of Dr. Stephen Porges' groundbreaking polyvagal theory and the best-selling author of Polyvagal Prompts and other books including the Polyvagal Flip Chart, the Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection. And she was the co-editor with Dr. Stephen Porges of clinical applications of the polyvagal theory.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. It's lovely to be here.
What time is it over in Chicago?
It is 6 p.m. for me at the moment. What is it for you?
It's 10 in the morning.
Oh, you're starting your day. You're starting tomorrow.
Yes,
right?
We're in Tuesday.
My mind does not know what to do with that. Right? You're starting tomorrow. I'm ending today. Yes.
Well, news from Tuesday. It goes well.
Yeah.
Tuesday's a good day. It's a glimmer-filled day. Okay. Love it. I will look forward to that.
Yeah. Again, we're just so excited today. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context about who we are and what we're doing here.
Great.
As I said, I'm Emily. I'm a freelance writer. I've written about Glimmers before. So this is why I'm very excited about this, because I have quoted your work. I have read your books, and
fun.
I've been a big fan of what you've been doing for a really long time. So this is a really big treat for me today. And so Renee and I got so into the concept of Glimmers that we just connected with the idea so much. It was just bringing us so much joy. And so then we had this idea, let's do a podcast on becoming Glimmer Hunters. So it's
I love that.
Yeah. So to have you here is just amazing. Like the person who coined the term, wow. We can't believe our luck.
I love it. Glimmer Hunters. I love that.
Yeah. All right. So to begin with, we were wondering if you, Deb Dana, the person who coined the term Glimmers in your 2018 book, Polyvagal Theory in Therapy, could you tell us what your definition of a glimmer is?
Oh, sure. To me, a glimmer is a spark of ventral energy, a tiny moment of ventral. So a tiny moment of regulation, connection, safety, joy, whatever the flavor of safety is in that moment. But just a tiny spark of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely.
And just, at the risk of being overly familiar, have you got any glimmers that have popped into your day today that you could share?
Oh, sure. I have had a lovely day of not really working. So there were lots of opportunities for glimmers. It was I had an early morning meeting, and then I had the rest of the day up until now to just be. And there was a moment when my cat looked up at me with these sweet eyes. It's like, oh, pick me up and hold me. That's a glimmer moment always. It's like, can't you just feel it? Yeah, you can, right?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And I love, I know this sounds crazy, but I love sort of overcast, foggy, gray days. My system loves those, and so I walked outside. And I'm outside Chicago. It should be freezing. I walked outside with just this on today, and it was a little mist coming down, and it was this moment of right. So those are a couple of glimmers for me today. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they're lovely. I really connect to the overcast days as well. I feel like in Australia, it's we're in Newcastle where we're recording, and it's very hot here. A lot of the time we're coming into we're in summer now. And so sometimes when it is, which is beautiful because we've got beaches here and it's all very lovely. However, when it is an overcast day and the pressure's off to go out and do something and be out, active in the, sunshine, doing something, when it's just a load off, I can just feel like not guilty for laying on the couch and reading and stuff like that. So it's nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
I'll give you one more glimmer because it was, as you're talking, I started my day. I'm someone who often is up very early, and today was one of those like too early days. But at any rate, I was up, a little before 4 o'clock this morning because I woke up and it was like, your brain turns on, and then but my glimmer was I opened my cupboard door and I had 3 choices of coffee. It's like, what coffee do you want to make today, right? The holiday blend, the peppermint mocha, or the Cayman morning, and it was like, it's like, that was lovely. Yeah.
Always good to have options, right? Love that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So
That's amazing because you guys, when you say about the fogginess and in December, because we have a hot Christmas every year. It's scorching. We make a British meal traditionally, and we all just have the meat sweats for hours. So it's awful. It's as bad as it sounds.
Yeah.
So to think that you're in coziness and it's cold outside, and then you have Christmas coffees and you have that beautiful peppermint bark and all those yummy Christmassy things that make sense in cold temperatures. That gives me a glimmer.
I was just about to say that.
There you go. See? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the joy of glimmers, isn't it? That I can share a glimmer and it might land in your system as a glimmer. It might not, right? We got to remember that my glimmer might activate you in a different way. But oftentimes when you were sharing about the not so much the heat and but the beaches, it was like, I could feel that.
Yeah, that's lovely, isn't it? We will talk about sharing them a little bit further on. But I wanted to ask you as well. So the term glimmer has really taken off, especially online, especially on TikTok. So we've got a stat here that says 27 million posts have been dedicated to glimmers on TikTok, which is just extraordinary. So we just wanted to know if you could tell us what that experience has been like for you. So you write this, you come up with this beautiful term, and then it just goes nuts online. So yeah, how does that feel?
Well, it's interesting as you said that. I didn't know what the numbers were, but when you said that, it was like, oh my goodness. I mean, part of me is surprised because I created the term glimmers in my work with complex trauma survivors. That's where it really originated from, because I was looking for a word that felt not so big that it would be overwhelming, but something that could be reachable in just these tiny moments when we could feel something other than the dysregulation. And so that's where it started, and then somehow it escaped the the clinical world and got out there into the world, so the other part of it is I love that, because I love that people are embracing the fact that they can find glimmers, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes I say in that hopeful way that glimmers help shape us differently, and as that ripples out, may help shape the world differently. So I'm thrilled that there are 27 million views on TikTok. I think that's amazing, and I'm thrilled when people send me their glimmers all the time. I get emails with people sending me glimmers and sharing glimmers, and it's heartwarming and still surprising.
Yeah.
That you have created a Glimmer Hunters podcast, and I think that is wonderful, because what better thing to be looking for in the world than glimmers, right?
Exactly. That's what we find. It just it gives us so much joy just talking about it, thinking about it. And then this whole podcast has just been one big joy exercise, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, really riding our edge. But we loved it with Glimmer Hunters as well, because glimmer is so, like you were saying, it's that spark. It's fleeting, and so you've got to, and reading off the back of your work, change your lens, have more awareness, mindfulness. But the idea of hunting them as well, kind of, it's got a fun contrast. Squash those.
It does. It does. It sounds fun to go glimmer hunting, right? Yeah. I like that. I like that. And the fact that they're tiny moments makes them doable, makes them reachable. Right. If we were asking people to find these extended periods of safety, connection, regulation, awareness, that would feel overwhelming to many of us in the world we're living in today. But the tiny sparks they're like, oh, I can do that.
There's something very achievable about it, that and the fact you can't really get it wrong, because it's about your system and how it shows up in your system, which is something that we really resonate with as well.
Yeah. And so you obviously, you coined the term or put a definition of the name Glimmer on the term through your work treating patients with complex trauma, which you referenced before. Can you tell us a bit more about how that started?
Yeah, when clients come to therapy, we really focus on the things that activate them, what we commonly call the triggers, right? Because that's what dysregulating, that's what they're suffering with. And yet, the nervous system needs both to have us address the triggers, reduce, resolve the cues of danger, and actively experience moments of safety in order to really come into regulation and help people thrive, not just survive, but thrive, right? And so in my work, I create maps. That's part of what I do in my work. And the second map in my mapping series was a triggers map. And I said, well, it has to be triggers and the good stuff. And so it became triggers and glimmers, which, is how that came to be. And then, for people to understand, especially the clients I was working with, but nowadays everyone, to understand that when we look for glimmers or hunt glimmers, as you were, inviting people to do, it's not because we want to ignore the suffering, right? It's not a way to turn away from the suffering. And it was very important in my work with clients that I let them know that. And so I think it's equally important for people and curious humans, as I call the rest of the world, the curious humans, understand that finding glimmers does not take care of your suffering, right? But what it does do is it builds the capacity to have access to regulation, safety, connection, so that we can then turn toward the suffering and be with it in a different way. We can reflect on it. We can get to know it. We can be with it rather than reliving it, right? So there are a couple benefits to glimmers. One is that they just feel good and they bring a spark of joy, a spark of whatever the flavor is into your world in that moment. And the second thing is they're building your capacity to anchor more in that place of regulation, which is, the essential, goal of human healing, is to have the ability to reach for regulation so that I can then be with my story differently. So I think it's important to remember that, because I don't want people to think, oh, I'm going to go glimmer hunting because I don't need to deal with any of the suffering that's going on. No, you're going glimmer hunting so that you can deal more effectively with the suffering.
Absolutely. I think I've read that in your work before. You've said that glimmers don't negate the presence of triggers, and it's not a form of toxic positivity. And I think, as you just explained why, I think it is a really important point. And I think that we sort of connected with that idea as well, that we didn't want to just be saying to people, oh, it's all rainbows and sunshine out there. It's not that. That's not what this is.
Right.
It's just more like building up our supply of, and the way you just said it about like regulation, because sometimes I think you can get sort of comfortable in the dysregulation, and that becomes more familiar in some ways too. And so can we get more familiar with the sense of regulation, and can glimmers help us momentarily build up that supply?
Yeah, that's a lovely way to put it. And yes, that the tiny, glimmers that we find help them become a bit more familiar, because for many of us, those moments of okayness are unfamiliar, as you said. So, getting familiar with them through, finding a glimmer is a sweet way to do it.
Yeah, that's just blown my mind. So I grew up in a chaotic childhood, and I have, a very stereotypical habit of recreating chaos, because it feels very comfortable, not comfortable, comforting, and it's very familiar. It's very unhealthy.
It's yeah.
And so and as you were talking about it, it's putting slack back in the rope. And what I love about glimmers as well, from my experience, is you can ignore them a bit. You can push them out. You can have a negative bias, but eventually one will get you. And the one I always reference is, you are running late and you drive to where you need to go, and there's a car park out the front. You can't, that's just a glimmer. That's going to land whether you like it or not. You could be having the worst day, and that's going to get you right in the kisser.
Totally.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And you're talking about your system. Your system was familiar with chaotic, disorganized environment. And so it was drawn towards it because it's familiar, right? That's true for all of us. We're familiar with whatever the environment is, and then those moments of glimmers begin to shape your system in a new way, which is the joy of them. They're gentle but powerful, and I think that again is I'm always looking for gentle ways to help shape a system, because if we try to do something too big too fast, the nervous system will go into a survival response because it says, no, this feels unsafe. So again, the tiny moments are what we want to do.
And I imagine that would be even more true for people that have suffered complex trauma as well. Their systems would probably be, they've probably been through a lot as well. So I think, I can see why a gentle approach would be much more appealing than trying to, do something more intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Deb, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about polyvagal theory and the 3 states of regulation, because in my work, so as I said, I've written some articles about it, and so I did a bit of a deep dive on polyvagal theory. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I was like, wow, this is quite complex. And I know that you're very well known for translating the work of Dr. Stephen Porges, and you've written several books on it, so you are very much the expert on it. But I was just wondering if you could just explain if it can be done simply, just a little bit about those 3 states of regulation.
Sure, yeah. And it is a delightful rabbit hole to go down, though, isn't it? When you start reading, and there you go, right?
Yeah. I was going for days.
Me it is anyway. Yeah. So yes, our nervous system is built with 3 states of regulation. We have a lot of ways that they blend together, but basically there are 3 states. There's the ventral state, which is the newest state of our nervous system, and the state that I think our nervous system longs to be in, and I think inherently knows how to get to. So that's the state of safety and connection, where we're organized enough, safe enough. I often call it the land of okayness, right? Because it's not that everything is beautiful and blissful and zen and perfect. It's that we have enough of that energy active and alive in our system so we can manage our day, right? So that's ventral. That's where glimmers live. Glimmers live in ventral, right? That's the glimmer land as well. So, and then when the world starts feeling too overwhelming, is too much for us, the first place our nervous system goes is to sympathetic fight and flight. And most of us will recognize that state. It's that state of, the anger, the frustration, the anxiety, the panic. Those are the 2 pathways of sympathetic nervous system. So we have ventral at the top, then we have sympathetic, which is the next layer down on the hierarchy. Right? And if sympathetic can solve the problem, so to speak, right? If we can find our way out of whatever it is that's distressing us, we can come back up to ventral. And in fact, that movement between ventral, sympathetic, and back to ventral really happens all the time. It happens all the time in small ways for us, and sometimes in big ways. What Steve gave us in polyvagal theory was the 3rd state that had not been defined and identified before his work creating polyvagal theory. And that's the state that's the earliest part of our nervous system, and it's the land below sympathetic. So we have ventral, sympathetic, and then the bottom of the hierarchy is dorsal. And dorsal is the place of disconnect, shut down, disappear, sort of lose hope, right? Give up, right? And that's your biology. All of that flood of energy that you get in sympathetic, that chaotic, disorganized energy that comes, and you can't sit still and you can't focus, and you're hypervigilant and all that going on, all of that drains from your system when you go to dorsal. So now you're left with no energy in your system, right? So you might still be going through the motions, but you don't have the energy to really care. It's like, okay, I'll do it, but don't really care, not really here, right? Why bother? Right? It's that flavor of giving up, right? And again, remember, your nervous system is doing that in search of your safety and survival. It's not your brain saying give up. It's your nervous system saying, get very quiet, become invisible, disappear, because you'll survive when you go to that place, and then you'll live to fight another day, so to speak, right? So again, we want to remember as we travel these states, it's a nervous system making the decision, not a brain. So it's not that I'm unwilling to connect or unwilling to show up and try. It's that I'm now biologically unable. And I think it's really important for us to remember that when we go to those states, the sympathetic or the dorsal, we now do not have access to everything that lives in ventral because our biology has shut the door to that, right? So, we, with our brains and we humans make meaning of things. We assign motivation. We make moral meaning. If we can stick with the nervous system, this nervous system simply acts in service of your safety because it thinks you're in danger, right? And the way it thinks you're in danger, if we want to talk about that other principle that really is so important, neuroception, which is the word that Steve created that defines how the nervous system takes in information and makes an assessment, right? So it has cues of danger and cues of safety. Glimmers, in fact, are these tiny cues of safety, right? So when a glimmer comes in, your neuroception goes, ooh, yes, right? This is nice, feels good. When a cue of danger come in, your nervous system goes, beware, right? Adaptive survival needed, right? So it's really the neuroception that comes into your nervous system and then either brings you to ventral or to sympathetic or dorsal. So again, below the level of your conscious awareness. We like to think our brains are in charge, but not so much, right? Not so much.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
It's amazing. And then with being activated in the sympathetic state too much, I assume, because that leads to also to adrenal exhaustion or, adrenal fatigue. So I suspect Glimmers helps restore that balance, do you think?
Yeah, because glimmers bring you even just for a few seconds, right? Which really is the glimmer practice. It's just a couple seconds of noticing and taking it in. But every time you do that, your nervous system gets a break from the sympathetic fight, flight, or the dorsal despair. It's a different experience. And the nervous system, I sometimes think when I take a moment, and I often do this when I see a glimmer, I go, oh. And I think my nervous system's going, oh, thank you, right? It's like this meeting where I'm going, oh, and my nervous system's going, yes, right? So yes, it gives you a momentary break from the dysregulation. And in fact, that's all you need to shape your system. That's the beauty, I think, of the nervous system and of, looking for glimmers or glimmer hunting as you do, the glimmer practice, is the nervous system changes by having these small moments over and over and over. It does not need a great big long experience to change. It changes, by doing small things over and over and over. That, I think, is so hopeful for all of us, right? Hopeful for trauma survivors who have no expectation they're ever going to land in regulation and stay there, right? And when I'd say you don't have to. Let's just dip a toe in. And every time you dip a toe in, it's increasing the capacity of your nervous system to go there. It's building that pathway. And then for, the rest of us, it's like, wow, that I can do this, right? And don't we all want to have something we can do? Right? That we feel like we're actually being successful, productive, and purposeful in doing something. And when the doing is look for glimmers that are going to take you a few seconds, easy to bring into your day, then I think we can be successful.
That's exactly it. We've talked a little bit about that, how, because we both have used a lot of different wellness practices before, like meditation, or, Renee, you've got lots of examples as well of all the things that you've tried, or, journaling. And I mean, they're all very valuable things, like lots of things to do, but sometimes it's just adding more to your schedule as well. It's like, I think it's just that's what's so delightful about Glimmers, is that you can just tap into them really, no pressure, just, an easy way to access that regulation. We actually had a question about the role of Glimmers, the role of hope in Glimmers, and I think you've just talked about that, because there is like this sense of hope that does, like you said, when you find one, it's like it renews your sense of hope, and that's my experience as well. I wondered if you might be able to talk about that a little bit more, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's lovely to have that experience when you find a glimmer, to be reminded. Hope is one thing. Sometimes I'm simply reminded that, there is good in the world, or I'm reminded the world's not as bad as I thought it was, or, there are all these flavors of it, right? There's no one flavor depending on my day. What's the thought that comes, but often it's that momentary interruption of I may have been on a path of lots of cues of danger, or lots of neuroception of not okay, right? And you find a glimmer and you go, oh, right, that's possible. Right, it opens up that possibility again of oh yeah, things can be okay, and I can feel that as well. And I think that's the beauty of glimmers and of our nervous system, that we can hold all the suffering and all of the stream of cues of disconnection that come, and our system can also exquisitely find and hold a tiny moment of okayness, right? Isn't that amazing how our nervous system is built to do that? I just think it's so lovely.
It's
Yeah.
incredible. And I think it's also a good reminder that we don't always have to be in a state of like regulation, like it's okay. I think that the whole principle that we move through all of them, because I think sometimes when you're doing all these wellness things and then you still get triggered by something, you're like, I'm doing so much work, why am I still triggered by that? But that's not what this is about. And I think that's a really great reminder for people as well.
Yeah, because it's
Yes,
paralyzing.
Yeah.
The big
well,
thing.
you are human.
Yeah. Oh,
Such a good
You got to
reminder.
remember, we are all human, and
Yeah.
our nervous system is normally, and we need to expect it is going to move down through survival and come back to regulation. That makes us human. That actually makes us a healthy human, when we dysregulate and come back to regulation, right? It's when we dysregulate and get stuck there that we suffer physically and psychologically. But resilience is built every time we have a moment of distress and come back to regulation. That builds resilience. So yes, let's invite all that in, and let's celebrate it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because glimmers, you're talking about the mind, and I couldn't agree more. Like, the mind is great, but also a bit of a moron sometimes. And, but if the central, I never twigged the central nervous system is different. So it's a sneaky sideways, like, the mind's busy stressing over here, and then the nervous system's like, come down here, come here. Like, it's calling it in and sidestepping the brain, because the brain, is like whack-a-mole. It's just like, no.
That's it.
That image was a glimmer for me. I just had a whack-a-mole glimmer. It was beautiful. Loved it. Yep.
So good.
Fun.
Just one more question before we start talking about your wonderful new book. We're thinking about the negativity bias, and so how our bodies and minds are wired to seek out the negative. Could you just talk to us a little bit about that, and how glimmers challenge this idea?
Yeah, so we all are built with a negativity bias. Does not mean we're a pessimist. It means we over the course of evolution, we are built to pay more attention to the negative things than the positive, so that we can survive. And every human carries that in their mind-body system. So the negativity bias means we respond more intensely to negative things than equally intense positive things, just the way we humans are built, right? So, when we, actually create a glimmer practice where the negativity bias is still there. It's always going to be there. But what we're saying is, and let's look for the tiny moments of positivity. Let's look for the tiny moments of okayness. Not that we're getting rid of the negativity bias. Again, this is a both and experience. And I think that's what we want to remember about the nervous system, not either or. This is both and the nervous system really appreciates both and, right? Both survival and safety, both triggers and glimmers, right? And so we want to remember that and bring it all in.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, amazing. So that covers part one, the fundamentals of glimmers, and talking to Deb about the history of glimmers and the science behind it.
Wow, so many juicy nuggets.
I know, mind blown. And luckily for us, we have more time with Deb. So that wraps part 1 of this podcast. And the next podcast following this will be part 2, where we're going to delve into the Glimmer Journal that Deb's published and why it's so important.
That's right. We'll be back with part 2 and Deb soon.
Thanks.